Hi, welcome to the design. Hi, and welcome to DCP. I'm Kirk. This channel is all about cutting the learning curve so you can get on with the creative process. Today we're going to do a walkthrough of the machine that I've just purchased, which is a 1080 130 watt CO2 laser. Let's get into it. Okay, so I have the 1080 130 watt CO2 laser. I have a Roida 6445G controller. It has a CW 5200 water chiller, and it also comes with a 160 watt air compressor and a 550 watt exhaust fan air blower. Now the working area is 1 meter by 800. The engraving speed is up to 700 millimeters a second, and it does not have autofocus. Okay, so let's have a look at this thing, see how it works. I'll lift the lid on it and take a look at what's actually going on. So at the very basics, we have a laser tube, we have a series of mirrors, reflective mirrors, and a laser head. Without getting technical, we produce the laser beam with that glass tube that's at the back of the machine. The glass tube is filled with gas. The gas is mainly carbon dioxide, nitrogen and helium. CO2 being the reason we call it the CO2 laser. We pass electricity through that gas and it excites it, and that just means it gains energy, and the production of that is light or photons. So the more energy we put in through there, or the more power, the more intense the light that we're going to emit, or the laser beam that we have as a result. Okay, so we're looking at our laser from the front. Let's go and get a close-up of the controller first. This is the main screen area. When it lights up, you'll be able to see, the files that you have and the XY coordinates and things like that. You can change values by using this keypad. Some of the values might be, your settings or your speed or your power. The 4 arrows are how we're going to be moving our laser head around the bed. The up and down is basically front to back, and left and right is left to right. Don't worry about the Z or the U. The Z is for the machines that have the autofocus, and you can adjust the bed height from there. We don't have that. This button in the center is actually how the laser head will move when you press those up and down and left and right arrows. So it's usually set in continuous mode, and that's this shape here, meaning that when you push the left button, it will move continuously left. And when you set it to this step mode, and the button looks like this, then it will actually do it in small increments. So as you press the arrow, it will move 1 mil at a time or 10 mil at a time, depending on the setting that you have. I'll do another video on that. The reset button is pretty handy because it will actually take the printer head all the way home. So you'll be able to see where the home origin is on your machine by pressing that. Just be careful not to have anything on your bed, because once you press that, it will go back to the home position. On mine it is the back right, but then it'll come straight back again to the user origin, or the last origin that it was set at. The start and pause button's pretty obvious. It will start and pause any current job that you have. And the stop button's pretty handy too, because that will just cancel a job. So if you're not happy with what's happening, you can just press the stop button. It'll cancel the job, turn off the laser, and bring it back to its last user origin again. Okay, if we move down to your amp meter, the amp meter will show you the current power consumption as it's running, and on the right hand side is an opportunity to adjust the amperage manually. I'll do a separate video on that later. The stop switch is the emergency stop switch and also your on switch. So if you turn it to the right hand side, the machine will power up, and if you press it in, the machine will completely power down. So the laser switch will turn the laser on and off. It'll give power to the laser or not, and that's independent of the machine, which means you can fire up the machine without the laser on, which means if you're just checking some workspaces or you want to frame a job, you don't need to have the laser on, which means you don't need to have your cooler on and all of that kind of stuff until you actually start cutting. So that's pretty handy. So that's the main circuit breaker. Up position is on, and power will run to the machine. Swinging around to the right hand side of the machine, we can see the two buttons that will allow us to raise the bed up or lower the work bed down. Directly beneath that, we can see where we have the opportunity to pop in a USB disk. We can add files there. We can connect the computer via USB, and then we can connect the computer via the Ethernet cable. Going around to the rear of the machine, we can see where the main 240 volt power plug goes. Beside that is a small red earth terminal. I did check around inside the panel there, and that's wired up to the 240 volt earth internally, so I don't need to do anything about that. And this white power board here is actually the power out. So yes, that small 2-pin plug that goes to your air compressor, you plug that in there and that will power that air compressor when the laser machine is on. Okay, so these are where the hoses go for the cooling and the air. So into water is the water going into the tube. Out water is the water returning from the tube, and into air is the connection that you put your air compressor onto. Those water hoses are connected to the CW5200 water chiller. And if around the back of the machine, you can see where the inlet is the return hose from the machine and the outlet is the water going to the machine. So I drew arrows on there for myself, basically, just so I could see quickly. Below that is your water level. Make sure it's sitting in the normal. So if we just scoot around and take a look, a little air compressor, the outlet hose joins up with the air inlet or the into air section on the back of the machine, and the power cable basically just goes, as we discussed before, to that power out box. That little 2-pin plug plugs in there. We go from there to the exhaust fan, and that's where you attach it to the machine. It'll go to that side of the exhaust fan, and the fan will draw air and push it out into that hose. I've hooked it up to this little piece of board there, but that board will go into my window. It's designed for that. Ignore the other one because I'll be hooking up an air conditioning, little portable air conditioning unit to that. Well, there you go. I'll walk around the outside of the 1080 130 watt CO2 laser. I hope it was helpful. In the next video, I want to do a power up for the first time and walk you through that experience and some of the things that I had to research or had to be comfortable with in order to want to get to my first job. So I'll see you then and talk soon.